Okay, so we're in the next section, coding with objects. Like I said, we're going to use objects a lot in your programming career. So we definitely want to be familiar with it. And there's a system to this that you're going to have to understand. So, like I say, if you're new to this channel, feel free to follow along with the curriculum. The link is in the description. It is free. So let's get into the textbook. All right, so coding with objects. Booleans and objects. Objects are not stored by their properties or by their value, but by reference. This right here, what this means is that objects, we technically don't, we store them by creating objects. You're used to storing things in variables. And we talked about referencing, and we're going to really get deeper and deeper into referencing things later on, especially when we start introducing classes to you. But reference means what it says right here, storing something by reference means that it is stored based on its location in memory. Now, here we're not going to go deep in what this means, but maybe later on I'll set up when it's time to try to help you level up your understanding. We'll do some videos or some training on later on. But what this means is understand that your computer has two types of memory. The memory for your hard drive and then your RAM, your random access memory. This is talking about the random access memory. In order for things to be stored, it has to be stored somewhere so it can be retrieved. And something that we don't talk about in JavaScript that we will talk about more in Java is called garbage collecting. It's put, once it's done with it, it throws into the garbage, then it gets collected and removed and frees up that memory. And so the reason how your software, your computer, your software is running on your particular machine and how well it runs efficiently is going to be based upon how much RAM you have. Well, here we're going to find out a little bit more. We're adding a little bit more to the layer here, understanding this process. Now, again, it's a little bit more intuitive and it takes a little more time to understand. So we won't go deep into this. I just want to put a seed in your mind. It took me a while to really get my head around. Once I really did a lot of researching and a lot of studying, I finally understand what that means. But I know it's a process, so I don't want to inundate you with too much information. I just want to kind of plant that seed. So this can lead to some confusion, of course, when comparing objects, because you think that because it has the same value and the same keys that they'll be equal together. That's not the case because that's not how objects work. So let's see how this affects our zoo software. Surely the zoo has more than one tortoise. The second tortoise is named Patricia. Tortoise number 2. It has species name, weight, age, diet, and sign, which is a function which we call a method. So this is technically a method, and notice it is an anonymous function. We have keys and values, right? Because Pete and Patricia are members of the same species, are the same age, and have the same diet, you might notice that many of their properties are equal, but some are not. Pete weighs more than Patricia, and of course, they have different names. So in your mind, yeah, by looking at it, we know they're different. You know they're two different tortoises, but how does that work in programming? Here, if we create let tortoise 1 and tortoise 2, here they are, and we give them the exact same keys and the exact same values. And then when we try to go ahead and console log tortoise 1 is strictly equal to tortoise 2, it says false. Now, we have learned up until this point, if we have something that's strictly equal, if they have both the same data types, and if they, even though the variable names are different, but they got the exact same data types and the exact same values, we know that if we do the strictly equal, we will say that's true. So if I was to go over here, let's look into the inspect tool. let's kind of look at what I'm saying. What you've been taught up until this point, you've been taught that num1, which is 5, and then we create another variable, declare another variable, call it num2, and we make that 5. And then what we do is we do if num1 is strictly equal to num2, and we're going to console.log, or yeah, console.log. So if this statement is true, it's going to print true, right? True. So you understand that. But now what we're saying is it's the exact same, seem like the same data type. It's the same string here, and it's the same array, but yet it's saying it's false. This is what we mean. The objects contain properties that have the same keys and equal value. However, the output is false. This comes down to the space that's in memory. It's how it's stored in memory. And this goes back to binary numbers and understanding how that works. It's definitely something that I will have to kind of teach to you later on to kind of help you get an understanding of what we mean. But it's a reference. This is now just a reference, meaning that tortoise 1 is pointing to this information, and tortoise 2 is pointing to this information, but they're stored in 2 different locations. That's what the compiler is comparing. Even though tortoise 1 and tortoise 2 have the same keys and values, they are stored in separate locations in memory. This means that even though you can compare the properties in different objects for equality, you cannot compare the object themselves for equality. That right there, I'm going to stop the video here because it's getting long, because there's a lot of information here. But that, what we just did right there, is kind of setting you up to understand what reference means. When we get into classes, we're going to understand it more. But it's one of those things you're definitely going to have to practice for right now. But in this particular course, we're not going deep on what that means in memory, but I do understand it's something that you need to know. So as we go further, I will help you level up your skill set by having something separate to help you understand what this means. So that's the end of this particular video. We'll finish up this section in the next video. So remember, the more you do, the more you improve.